Are you happy? Are you deep down satisfied with the person you are, how you're living your life, and the future as it appears today? Do you have a passion? Is there any one thing in your life that is so important that it makes prioritizing everything else simple? If the answer to any of those questions is no, do you have any idea why? Welcome to the Verimour Speaks podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Keegan, co-founder of the dating app Verimour and the nonprofit app Hero Harbor. Happiness, mine and that of others, is something that's always been very important to me. I've devoted my life to understanding how we take the things life throws at us and combine that with our own special gifts to come away with an experience that, while not always perfect, is one we are proud of and allows us the fewest regrets and least amount of heartache. Whether through my personal musings or conversations with guests, the aim here is not to find a one-size-fits-all to-do list of change, but instead a mindset that lessens our fear, reduces judgment of ourselves and others, and frees each individual to build the life that truly represents happiness for them. Thank you for joining us on the Verimour Speaks podcast. I've always worked to provide the most honest, helpful content I could in forms that reach the largest possible audience. And my extreme dislike of greed-driven organizations means I do so without ads or sponsors. But for us to continue improving with better guests and more consistent production quality, we need your help. If you have found any value in what we do and the content provided, please show us a little love by making a contribution directly to the podcast or as a tax-deductible donation on the heroharbor.org website. Thank you again for listening, and please enjoy the show.
Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls.
Welcome back. Today we're speaking with Rick Stevens. Rick is an Army veteran and he has a very interesting and unique story. So thank you, Rick, for joining us.
Oh, no problem at all.
Okay, I know that you have a story, a very specific story that you want to tell. So while usually I start off, with a series of questions, I'm just going to let you tell me whatever you want everybody to know.
Okay, all right. Well, people that are listening, they pretty much know what PTSD is and what comes with that. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how I got it.
Right.
It was, I was in the military, did things that, a lot of people do. And,
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of it, I developed PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
I went many years self-medicating.
Right.
Alcohol, a lot of drugs, not just, marijuana, but crystal meth, heroin, the harder
Mm-hmm.
drugs. And I did many years of trying to self-medicate and do that myself. I was one of them tough guys. I didn't want to tell anybody I had issues. I could take care of this on my own.
Yeah.
And it caused many, many problems. A lot of time in jail, a lot of times through the court systems. And then my wife's uncle was also in the first Iraq and had PTSD, and that's when he introduced me to the Veterans Administration. And
Mm-hmm.
so I ended up, going through the VA and trying to get some help, still using drugs, and tried to use them as a way to get drugs where I didn't have to pay for them.
Right.
And they caught on really quick to that. And
Right.
so even to this day, it's still in my chart that, I have
Right.
an issue with with substances, and they won't write me anything more than an 800
Yeah,
milligram
once you get
Motrin.
that notation, it's really hard to overcome it. It's hard to find somebody who recognizes, yeah, I get it. So, okay.
And I'm glad that they won't write it.
Right. But
Because
still.
I
Yeah.
got clean December 2nd of 1996. So I've been
Wow.
clean 22 years now.
Very nice. Congratulations.
But when I got clean, I went back to the VA again, and they started me on medications. And that was a whole different issue. And, well, let me back up one. As a result of my drinking and drug use, I developed diabetes. So, from consuming massive amounts of alcohol and not eating properly. So the VA started me on, medications. And, it just, every time I would go back, another one was added, another one, then the diabetes, and then, and
Do you mind if I interrupt you for just 1 second?
No, go ahead.
I know I understand, and I wasn't thinking about it when you said that you weren't gonna go into the PTSD thing. I know you've told this story before, and so I'm hoping that it's not uncomfortable for you. But I would really like because the thing is, not everyone, in fact, a lot of the people, and hopefully a lot of the people who will listen to this in the future, now in the future, are not veterans, are not heroes, and who have not been through this. And so if you don't mind telling the story, at least some of it that you told me, because they need to understand this is not, it wasn't just like, oh, the military is a little tough. I woke up one day and it was, no, you went through some horrific stuff that the average person doesn't go through. And so, and the other thing, if you don't mind, I would like for you to tell about, because the transition from alcohol to drugs wasn't 100%, it's not like you went in search of the drugs. You had some help there. So if you don't, I would really love for you to tell that part, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, we can back up. In the military, had a good friend of mine was killed. And I was right there when it happened, and internal body parts on the outside. And that was on a Tuesday. And Wednesday, we were going through a little town, and for whatever reason, an M1 Abrams shot a Bradley fighting vehicle. And inside of that Bradley fighting vehicle was 5 more of my friends, and this was on Wednesday. And they were all on fire, and I couldn't get them put out. And, had to, I don't know if, the smell of that.
Oh, see, for me, there's no more justification in the world for anything that happened afterward than that. That is beyond, even for me. And I saw a lot of stuff when I was there during Desert Storm. It doesn't even compare to that. So, for that, I'm sorry, and I'm thankful for you. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're telling that story, because people really need to understand that. And thank you.
Right.
So go ahead.
And I couldn't save them. I couldn't save any of them. So I had 6 close friends die within 2 days, and I couldn't save them. There was nothing I could do. And, I got into the guilt of not being able to.
Survivor guilt. Yeah.
Right. And then started blaming myself, and then got into the whole thing, how come it wasn't me? Why am I still here?
Well, the other thing you told me too was that you were talking about the nightmares, and so that again, helped lead to the alcohol and the drugs. So,
yeah, because the nightmares started pretty quick after
no doubt.
Those 2 days, and they were running at me in the nightmares, and I couldn't do anything for them, and I started running from them in the nightmares, and at times I would go to bed, and I would wake up, for a lack of a better term, and I would have no idea where I was at. I would be in my boxers, and I would have to walk around and find a street sign. I was running out of my house in my sleep, and the furthest I made it was a little over 2 miles from my home. And I had to walk around in the middle of the night and find street signs and figure out how to get back to my house. And I deadbolt it. I would chains on it, and have no memory still to this day of getting out of my house. And it happened, man, dozens of times over the years.
Right.
And I mean, it was scary how I never got arrested, you know, being almost naked out, you know, in the middle of the night in the day in different neighborhoods, you know,
Right.
and so, but during, you know, when the nightmare started, I really wasn't much of a drinker. And we started drinking one night, a bunch of us, and I mean, I drank to excess. I passed out. Well, I didn't have any nightmares that night.
Right.
I mean, I was almost comatose. I drank so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that took off.
And that
And
makes
I
perfect
did that.
sense. Yeah, I mean, that's there's. I don't see how anyone cannot understand that. I mean, people self-medicate in all kinds of ways for a lot less justification. So I don't see how people cannot understand that. So thank you.
Right. And then when I got back to the States, you know, my goal when I went into the military was to retire, but the drinking caused some issues, and, you know, and they wanted me to go to inpatient treatment when it was time to re-enlist or get out. And, you know, I wasn't going to inpatient treatment because I didn't have a problem. So I got out, and I wasn't home long, maybe within the first week of being home, and was just sloppy drunk like I'd always got. And a buddy of mine introduced me to crystal meth. And, you know, you don't have nightmares if you don't sleep for 5 or 6 days, you know. And then after a short period of time, it was probably 3 or 4 months, you know, being up 7 days, a guy introduced me to heroin and said, hey, you know, you do some of this, you'll be able to go to sleep.
Well,
So,
okay, let me, but again, when you and I talked, the first time, tell us how that happened, because you didn't, my understanding, or what I got from it, you weren't sure you didn't know what you were taking, right?
No.
Right. See, okay. So again, that's why I said you had some help.
Yeah, he just told me, because I said, guys, I'm going home, I'm drunk. And he took out a little knife with some white stuff on the end of it and said, you know, this will sober you up a little bit. So I snorted it off the end of the knife. And I mean, and I honestly, at that point, I fell in love. I mean, that's the best way to describe that feeling that I had from crystal meth. I fell in love at that moment with it. And I mean, me and crystal meth and alcohol and heroin, I mean, we were in a relationship for about 8 years, you know, and it was daily, and it moved into where I was injecting all the drugs, and, you know, it progressed like it does, you know, and, you know, the stealing and, you know, conning and manipulation and ripping people off and, you know, doing all of that.
It's a natural progression, no matter how you look at it. It's a natural progression. And the important thing that people need to know is that, you know, it doesn't make you a bad person. Not in one bit. I mean, you served your country, and it was a natural progression. Okay, so so go ahead and keep going.
And then the last time that I actually went to court, I had 107 felony charges.
Oh my God. Is that some kind of record?
And I was looking at a little over 200 years is what they were looking at giving me. And so in my conning and manipulating self, I told them, I said, you know, look, I'll make you guys a deal. I'll go back in the military if you don't do a felony charge on me. Well, they immediately agreed to that, because guess what? They don't have to deal with me if I'm back in the military. Well, the military is like, yeah, we don't want you at the shape that you're in. So it didn't happen, and I didn't get the felony charge. So I ended up, then they put me on probation, and I absconded on my probation, and they hit me with one felony charge. So I spent many years as a convicted felon, lost all my rights, and which was probably better at that point that I didn't have a gun throughout that time in my life, because you know, I didn't have access to a gun at that point. And you know, I never, I mean, there was times that I felt like suicidal some, but it was just not wanting to live like that anymore. It was that I wanted to die. Most of my stuff, not most, all of it has been, 99.9% of it has been homicidal, wanting to
Right.
hurt other people.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of physical confrontations and, you know, a lot of stitches and the physical confrontations over the years, you know.
Well,
I
the thing you
mean,
told me the other day, you mentioned, and for me, you mentioned a rage. You said that you had a white hot rage right in the center of your chest. And back when
right,
I was doing it, now in my case, it was the VA meds that caused my long term. But for me, it was depression, and I used to say it was like an elephant sitting on my chest. I couldn't breathe. It was just so heavy. So for me, it wasn't a rage. It was, it was a sadness, an all-consuming sadness. But but that's something. I mean, and people, the thing is right nowadays, what I'm finding more and more and more is that the thing that's consuming people is loneliness. And so whether they can identify with the illicit drugs or not, they should, if they're honest with themselves, they should be able to identify with the self-medicating. And the thing
right,
is, self-medication comes in so many forms. It could be, substance abuse, or it could be sex, or it could be Netflix, or it could be Facebook. Self-medication, ignoring what's going on in your life, comes in a whole lot of forms. And so that's what people need to recognize. And
right.
for them, for me, it was sadness. For you, it's anger. For them, it's loneliness. But they all amount to the same thing. You have to own up to it and fix it yourself.
Absolutely. And, you know, and like you said, the loneliness, I mean, I could be in a group of people and alone.
Yes, absolutely.
You
Yes.
know, because, you know, my wife, we were sitting there, we hadn't been together long. We've been together 10 years now. And I mean, I'm a horrible employee and have been since I've got out of the military. So that's why I started my own business, because I don't,
It's an
I don't
incredibly common story. I get it.
I don't tolerate stupidity, and
Yep.
I don't tolerate bullshit, you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, if I work for somebody, I have to, but I call it out, and
No.
I've been fired so many
I
times. But
I say I'm an entrepreneur because either I quit or they fire me. I want to fix things.
yeah,
Most people, they just want you to follow directions. I have been told you can't follow directions. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm a Marine. Don't tell me. My whole life was about direction. I got more direction in my pinky finger than you've had in your entire body. So yeah, I get it.
right.
And this is a common story. The people that I interview time and time again, it's so common, and I get it. Okay.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm unemployable. I'll be the
Yeah.
first one to admit it. That's why I own my own business, because, you know, and some days I don't like my boss. You know what I mean? So,
I mean,
but
I'm the worst
I
boss
can
in the world. Yes.
I can cuss my boss out now and not get fired. You
Yeah,
know,
I know.
but you know, she asked me early on. She's like, I was sitting there and I guess I was kind of like in a little daze, and she's like, "What are you thinking?" And I was like, you know, honestly, if I told you what I was thinking, you would never talk to me again. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, I can't elaborate on that. I said, the stuff that goes through my mind on a constant basis, I mean, it's about hurting people,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I see it vividly, like I'm actually doing it. And it's just a constant thing. And I mean, this is the first time I've ever said that out loud,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I mean, to be honest, if I told the average person what goes through my mind on a daily basis, it would scare the shit out of them, and they wouldn't have anything to do with me
And
anymore.
that's exactly why Hero Harbor was created, because we get it. You don't even have to go through the story. We've all been there. Matt is sitting here nodding his head. I've done half a dozen or so interviews right now, and I've heard stuff that I won't. I don't know that I can broadcast, just because, for the same reason that you just said. It's like they wouldn't get it, and people are killing themselves because of that. A story I told recently was, just maybe a month or two ago, was about an Army person I was told about, a first sergeant who had been in 20 years, 15 as a sniper. 21 years, sorry, 15 as a sniper. He was facing retirement, and the same kind of thing. How in hell do you integrate back into a society that 97% of them have no freaking clue and cannot even, they can't possibly imagine? And so he killed himself, put a gun to his head, killed himself. And it's because, and again, people love to label, and they love to judge, and they love to say, oh, you're whatever. And the fact is, and of course, not everybody in the military is amazing, but the fact is they've all been through something. And you could have been an admin person your entire life, never seen combat. That's not the point. The point is that we it takes a certain type of person to join, and it takes another type of person to excel and succeed. And so it's just a different mindset. And like you said, those of us who we were entrepreneurial, and we were driven, and we were all those things before we joined. We may not have known that at the time, but there's a reason that we made it through boot camp, and there's a reason that we made it through an entire enlistment or an entire career. We're a different kind of people. It's not better, it's not worse, we're just different, and we have to operate differently based on the type of people that we are.
Right. Yeah, because like you just said, the average normal, I call them normal, whatever, earthlings, whatever they are. They don't understand.
They don't. Well, this is something else that we need to consider too, is that, I cannot tell you how many people have tried to change me. Oh, you need to be this and you need to be that. And it finally, and this was just recently, the epiphany I had, because I knew that I wasn't going to change, but the epiphany I had was, you know what? You are the one with the problem, not me. Just because you can't keep up with me, or just because you don't think like I do, I don't want to be like the average person. And that's military aside, that's veteran status aside. I love who I am, and I've worked very hard to become that person. And so I don't want to think like you. So it's not trying to change me. It's out of the question, because you're, and I'm not saying that you need to change either. I'm saying that we need to accept each other exactly, as is, because that's who we are. That's a lot that was done to us. Anyway, I said I was going to listen. I'm not doing a very good job.
My thing is, when someone tells me you need, I don't need to do shit. You know what I mean? I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Do I regret having PTSD going in the military? Do I regret doing drugs? Absolutely not. If I could change anything, it would be the pain that I caused my family.
Right.
I would take that pain away from them. I wouldn't change anything else, because it made me who I am.
Yes. And
I'm okay with Rick today.
Yes.
I don't want to harm Rick today. You know what I mean? I don't. I'm okay with me. Do I fall short some days? Absolutely. But I strive to do tomorrow a little better than I did today.
I love it. Thank you.
And I try to do everything in my life today with just integrity, and after all my legal problems and all that, I actually became a deputy sheriff.
Nice. So you're a double hero.
So I went through a lot to get there because of my past. I was honest about the drugs.
Right.
Normally you have to go through 2 interviews. I had to go through 9.
Oh, wow.
And my final interview was with the sheriff, and he told me, he said, what better person to have in here than, he said, I send my deputies to year-long schools to look for things, with people that are on drugs. He said, you lived it. He said, you've got a different.
Person. Yeah, that was a very enlightened sheriff. And it's, Matt's over giving us a thumbs up. Yes. That's the biggest challenge, is finding people like that, people who get it. Yes, absolutely. I have said just recently, I was talking to somebody, another Marine, talking about luck. And I said, yeah, you could point to the good things in my life and say they were lucky. And they were. I'm very thankful for a number of, things that I haven't. However, to me, some of the best luck is the bullshit that I went through, because like you just said, you take those things and you turn them into ways to help other people. And if you didn't have those experiences and have that understanding, you could not have the empathy, and you could not have the insight and enlightenment that it takes to do that. So kudos to you, and kudos to that sheriff. And that is, just so amazing.
And what I found in law enforcement was the same as the military. There's law enforcement officers that have PTSD that never even were in the military.
Yeah.
And it's like the military. It's not talked about. I
Right.
mean, you don't,
Well,
you
yeah,
know, and
because you don't
cops,
want people walking around with guns that they're afraid who are,
right,
and the thing is, it's not just police, it's not law enforcement either. It's first responders. And the fact
right,
of the matter is, and I keep saying this, is that there's I just recently learned a stat. In 2016, 45,000 people killed themselves in the U.S., double the homicide rate. Now, this past year, we lost just under 6,000. The combination of military associated people, whether active or veteran, and a similar percentage within the first responder ranks. So you figure that's maybe okay, if we go really broad, maybe 10,000 people. So those other 35,000 people, those were common everyday people, and that was so. The thing is, there's a whole lot of stress going on across the board, and so common everyday people who, as we just said, can't understand what we've been through are killing themselves. And so it's almost it's no surprise whatsoever that when your everyday experience is interacting with the worst part of society, and I don't necessarily mean bad people. What I mean is, accidents, or people in crisis. When that's your life, yes, it takes its toll.
right,
If I had to hear this story every single day, so that's what people need to understand, is it's not, you can't pinhole it, or I mean to pigeonhole it to just certain things like that. So okay, all right, keep going.
right. And after I finally got clean, I have kept myself in helping areas. I was a
Mm-hmm.
substance abuse counselor for over 13 years, and I got into the mental health side of it. I had the last job I had as a substance abuse counselor, I had 41 schizophrenics that had substance abuse issues. It
Holy
was the best job, the worst job, the
yes,
hardest, the
yeah.
easiest, all rolled into one job.
Yes, absolutely. Because
But
we get so much joy from helping, but at the same time, our hearts hurt so badly for what they're going through. I can see. My gosh.
and I think it made me a better counselor and just a better human being, because I know their struggles. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't have schizophrenia, but I mean, I have stuff that goes through my mind that is not real, but my
Right,
brain tells me that it's real.
right.
You know what I mean? And so I can relate to them. And I had some women that had been, had some sexual stuff going on that had PTSD,
Right.
and as a result of it, two of them actually got clean. And as far as I know, they've got double digit clean time now,
Wow.
and everything that I did,
Mm-hmm.
everything I went through, everything I've seen and heard and been exposed to
Mm-hmm.
is worth it for those two,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sending you this big, enormous virtual hug, Rick. Thank you so much. All right, keep going.
And it's just, I've always tried to keep myself in helping. I went into law enforcement, trying to help people, and in law enforcement, you see a different side of people.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing predominantly with that 1% of population that don't want to be dealt with for
Right.
whatever reason. You know what I mean? And there's not a lot of
Yeah,
smart
well, and the
criminals
thing
out
is,
there, but
it's so easy for us, because we may have not been through any particular, circumstance. It is so easy to just to label people or to judge people. We love to judge people, and it's like, because the fact is, if law enforcement, and when they came across you at any of those points in your life, they might have thought you were just the dregs of society and not worth anything, and blah 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 blah. And the fact is, you are an amazing person, and you've turned that around, and you're helping people. So we cannot judge anybody on any given day based on their circumstances, because we don't know,
right.
forgive my French, fuck all about them. So
And I had numerous law enforcement officers through my criminal career, I'll
mhm,
call it, call
mhm.
me a piece of shit, that I
Yeah,
was worthless. I mean,
yeah,
even my own father told me, you know, through that time, he's like, you'll never amount to
yeah.
shit, and that was my own family that was
Mhm,
telling me that I was worthless,
mhm.
So I mean, I started believing it for a long
Yeah.
time, that I'll never change. And And finally, a couple things happened. I, attempted suicide and got clean and been clean ever since. And I mean the medications that are out there on the market for PTSD and the nightmares, and I mean they cause a whole different gamut of problems than what I had before I started taking them. you
Yeah.
know I mean, 29-year-old male, they start dumping these medicines in you, and then you can't perform sexually.
Hmm.
At 29 years old, it's devastating. you
Well, this
know
is something I said to somebody the other day, the and I hate to say it because I don't like to blame, but the VA has become this giant pill pushing machine, and I experienced it just yesterday again, in a form I won't go into. But what I said to somebody the other day is, you take men and women who have been so independent and so we're problem solvers. We're hard charging. We're overachievers. We're very, very driven, and we're accustomed to. We may work as a team, but we're accustomed to being, very just. We're again, independent is the best word. And then all of a sudden, you start shoving this shit down their throats, and you've taken away. You make them dependent on a pill. It's like, if I don't take this pill, I can't function. And then they see themselves as weak, and they see themselves as inadequate, and never mind, like you said, all the other physical things. So that alone can drive you to all sorts of additional bad behavior. So it's a spiral that, and it, in my opinion, not a not very humble one, it's that we the largest part of the VA is not run by people like you and me. The people who are supposedly helping us have never been there, and so it's a combination of, they've never been there, they have no stinking clue what it's like. They have these, whether it be degrees or certificates or just experience, that it's like, oh no, I know what my schooling tells me I know exactly how to handle this. And then the third part is that, I forgot the third part. Oh no, the third part is that they've heard the same story over and over and over and over in different forms, different trauma, but it's the same story, and so they become apathetic, and that's partly it's a necessity. I have repeatedly said I have two different email accounts receiving Google alerts, or anyway, I have almost 2,000 Google alerts. And many of them have to do with suicide, with loneliness, with veteran, and I can't read them because I would get, I hear enough of this stuff often enough that I can't. You know what I'm saying? If you hear it all the time, you cannot take that home. You could not be a good family member. You could not be good to your kids and your spouse if you took that pain home with you. I mean, for me, it would be like going in and watching puppies murdered every day. There is no possible way I can be part of that world. So it's a combination of things, and there definitely needs to be changed, because you can't. And the thing is, if you understand, I've just the handful of interviews I've done, if you understand these men and women, then you understand that drugs is not what they need. And of course, as you said too, I can't remember, I think you told me you'd gotten off of like 11 or so. But the thing is, after a point, after I'd say even 2 or 3, you don't know if it's the med because the thing is, we all react to medications differently. So once you keep piling one on top of another, you have no idea whether it's the person speaking or the medications.
Right.
Okay.
And they got me caught up in the vicious cycle with the medication, because I start fighting with the wife because I couldn't do anything sexually. Because of the medication. So I stopped taking the medication.
Right.
The nightmares start coming back. And, that part of my life is okay. But then I end up in a locked up psychiatric unit because I go off the freaking deep end.
Right.
And then they put me back on the medications, get out. The wife starts griping about because I'm not able to do anything. And I stayed in that cycle for years and years and years. And I mean, it was up until 5 months ago, I was in that for over 20 years. I was stuck in that cycle: medicine, locked up psychiatric unit, medicine, just
Right.
that whole cycle, oh, well, this one is not going to cause that, or we'll give you this one to combat that one, and it turned out, 50 years old, I'm on 11 different medications, for anxiety, PTSD, nightmares. They said I had high cholesterol.
Medication.
Yeah, I mean, they were giving me medications to combat the side effects for the medications that they were giving me, and
Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed the content we shared with you, please subscribe, review, and share this show with your friends. Veramore, the dating app, and Hero Harbor, the social connection tool for heroes, are both in the app stores. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Veramore, Veramore_app, or Hero Harbor.